proteins. Okay. Then you are having carbohydrates also in the plasmambrane structure. When you take the carbohydrate may get associated with a lipid molecule, or the carbohydrate may be associated with a protein molecule. So carbohydrates won't be free. So that's why they are forming the mosaic. I told you the fluid mosaic stands for fluid is nothing but the lipid and protein nature, and mosaic is nothing but the random arrangement of carbohydrates. That's for the fluid mosaic model. Now carbohydrates, if you take, you will be having carbohydrates in the form of glycolipid. I'm circling the label part on the diagram, observe it. The pink one. Okay. So glycolipid, glyco stands for carbohydrate associated with lipid. One part, or glycoprotein. Same, the pink one only on the diagram, labeled one. So glyco stands for carbohydrate associated with protein. So glycoprotein. So they are arranged in a random fashion on the membrane. So that's how different molecules arrangement renders to structure of cell membrane. All these are related to the selective nature of the cell membrane. Selective of what? Permeability is the word. Permeability is nothing but some molecules only are allowed to get into the cell membrane. Some molecules only are allowed to go out of the cell membrane. That's what permeability. Allowing permission, isn't it? So that is very selective. It will not allow all the molecules to get in. It will not allow all the molecules to go out. So that selective permeability is given by the fluid mosaic model, and these are the different parts or different biomolecules arrangement in fluid mosaic model. See here, when you take the lipid bilayer, the same one as I explained in the structure, this is the lipid bilayer. Okay, now in the lipid bilayer you are having protein called integral protein, and above the integral proteins you will be having some carbohydrates in the form of glycolipid or glycoprotein. Okay, so that's how the whole structure, and a bit if you elaborate will be like this. Okay, now when you take the membrane carbohydrates in the form of glycolipid and glycoprotein, they play a major role in cell recognition. This is the point of interest over here. This is how the immune system works actually. What happens is, assume that this is a molecule which was already there on the plasma membrane, which the plasma membrane is a cell. Assume that this is a cell which had already recognized this protein. Assume that this is a protein X. Assume that it is a protein X. So if in future, if the same kind of protein X tries to get into the cell, the plasma membrane will allow it to move into the cell. If this is the outside of the cell, from outside the cell into the cell, a protein X wants to move. The X was already recognized in the plasma membrane, then the X can move into the cell. Assume that there is a protein called Y. Okay, assume that is a foreign protein. Foreign means what? Which is not at all recognized the plasma membrane in the growth or development. Assume that this is a Y protein. Suppose the Y protein tries to get into the cell. The plasma membrane will not allow the Y protein to get into the cell. This we call as rejection. Rejection of foreign cells. Here foreign cells means what? The cells which are not exposed to the plasma membrane during the growth of the cell. The cell, when it is growing, some proteins and some carbohydrates will be exposed to the cell during its growth. But some foreign molecules like the bacteria or the viral infection, example I'm telling. Suppose the bacteria will not be exposed to a cell during its growth, isn't it? So when in future a foreign molecule like bacteria If it wants to get into the cell membrane will not allow it to get into the cell, which is the basic of immune system. So where your immune system lies? Your immune system lies the foremost on the skin, isn't it? Through skin, most of the infections will not be allowed to enter into the body. So on the skin, if you take the plasma membrane is the one. Each and every cell in the body will have the plasma membrane, isn't it? So the skin cell also will have plasma membrane around it. And the plasma membrane will not allow the foreign cells and they resist them. Okay, so that is the key function in cell recognition. If the cell was already recognized by the plasma membrane, then only it will allow. Otherwise, it will not allow. This we call as selective permeability. So all the points are interrelated. Okay, I'm just to explain the whole process. Selective permeability is plasma membrane chooses which molecule has to enter, which molecules to go out. How the plasma membrane chooses? Based on the carbohydrate structure. Okay, when the carbohydrate structure recognizes the cell, it will allow. If it will not recognize, it will treat it as foreign cells and it will reject the foreign cells, which forms the immunity of a body. So this is one concept related to function of plasma membrane. Here when you take the cell recognition part, so one of the students asked, what is the role of cholesterol, isn't it? Cholesterol is the one which you find here in the lipid bilayer. I'm showing in a zigzag way, see in the diagram, or the green shaded one. So this is the cholesterol molecules. The cholesterol molecules gives liquidity or fluidity through which the allowed molecules will move into the cell like this. So for free movement of the molecules, you can say cholesterol plays a role in the cell membrane. So cholesterol enhances the molecules to move freely in and out of the cell membrane. In a whole, these are the few points which can be described as functions of plasma membrane. It forms a physical barrier. It's nothing but it separates. So here whatever I explained, the carbohydrates, how they are showing, this all relate to selective permeability. So selective permeability is nothing but choosing the molecules which will enter into the cell and which will go out of the cell. Okay, so it separates, the plasma membrane separates cell from outside environment, the extracellular environment. Then it regulates the movement. So which will enter the cell, which will exit the cell. So all those will be regulated by the plasma membrane. Then it connects different cells, isn't it? Each and every cell is connected by plasma membrane. So through which they communicate. If you remember the nerve cell, just remember the nerve cell, you will be having hair-like dendrites on the nerve cell, isn't it? So all those are surrounded by plasma membrane, which selectively permeates the coordination. Okay. Then chemical recognition, this I am going to explain with blood grouping concept. Now cell recognition, just now I explained immunity. So which only those will enter the cell which are not identified. They will be taken as foreign particles and it will exclude them. So these are the various functions of plasma membrane.